My name's Idiotech, and today I'm going to review LEGO World for PC. So, LEGO World is an exploration / building game similar to games like Minecraft. It's in early access and it just came out today. Honestly, right now the game feels very early, so if you're expecting a polished game, I wouldn't expect that with this one. It's a very, very early alpha. It feels very unfinished, very unpolished. So, let's take a look at it and see what it's got to offer. As it stands right now, the game requires some serious optimization. Now, as I've said, it's in early access, so we can somewhat forgive it in this regard, but it does run terribly. I'm getting 15 to 20 FPS on a regular basis running this game. As soon as you load in like large portions of the environment, the FPS just drops horribly. And I'm running an R9 290 overclocked, so, you know, it's not the best system in the world, but it's certainly not bad either. And, you know, 15 to 20 FPS for me is practically unplayable, so if you're the kind of person who really cares about performance or just wants a stable 30 FPS at least when playing a game, don't expect it here. In terms of bugs, there are a few, mostly relating to the controls and camera, nothing really game-breaking. And as for game-breaking bugs, I haven't had any crashes or anything like that. Some people have reported things like this on the forums, but it's not very widespread, so it looks like you will actually be able to play the game, it's just you won't be able to play it very well. The visual style in this game is nice. I mean, it draws heavily on previous LEGO games and the LEGO franchise in general. Animations are good, sometimes pretty eccentric and funny. The model detail on vehicles is nice. Plants, you know, the actual objects in the world that aren't made of LEGO pieces themselves are quite nice to look at. The only criticism I do have is the environmental detail is a little noisy and chaotic, and it's because they chose to use very small blocks to represent hills and valleys and build the world out of. And I would have preferred, personally, if they'd made them a little bit larger, just to avoid some of that visual noise that you get when looking at it. At distance, the game can look a bit like pixel art, and I don't really like that, but it's a personal choice. Overall, though, graphics and art style here, really nice, well done, the aesthetic is done perfectly. It looks like LEGO, so if that's what you want, that's what it looks like. So the sound design currently in the game is pretty bare bones, and the music choice they've made I'm not a huge fan of for the theme, so it feels like I'm about to play a World War II flight simulator. It's good music, but it doesn't fit with the LEGO universe very well in my opinion. It's okay, it does what it needs to do, but it just feels really out of place. In terms of sound design though, the environmental sounds are nice, so just walking around with the birds chirping and the wind blowing through the trees, that stuff's good and it's handled well. There are some annoying sound effects though, so when you break objects open and they drop coins, they're very loud in comparison to everything else, and after a while it gets a bit frustrating to just hear the same sound over and over again. The same with jump animations, although they're not too loud, but they're repetitive and the same thing over and over. It does get a little annoying after a while. Overall though, the sound effects are fine. There do need to be some tweaks here and there, and I think the music choice is a little odd. In a game like this, in a game like Minecraft or Terraria, game design is the most important feature, obviously. I mean, games like Minecraft and Terraria, they didn't focus on production values, they didn't have the best sound, they didn't have the best graphics, but they had some really good gameplay, and that's what drew people in. Now, this game unfortunately doesn't really have that in my opinion. So, how the game works is this. There's two aspects to it. One is exploration and the other one is building and construction. And so, with exploration, all that you really do is you walk around the world and you encounter objects in the world that you haven't encountered before, or characters and things like that, and then they become unlocked, so to speak. They get added to your unlocked tab in your models section. And then you can pay coins for them, which you obtain by just breaking random objects in the world, or finding chests, and then you can just spawn them as many times as you like. So you may find a flower, it gets added to the tab, you pay for it, and then you can just spawn it as many times as you like. Same thing for vehicles, same thing for characters, etc, etc. Now, that's kind of it in terms of gameplay, honestly. I mean, excluding the building system, that's really all there is to offer, and I just don't think that's very much, to be honest. Now, the other aspect is the building system. Now, this comes in two forms. You've got terrain deformation, which is honestly quite good and nice to see in a game like this. You can raise the terrain, lower the terrain, smooth the terrain, flatten the terrain, delete the terrain entirely if you want to. That's cool, I like that a lot. And it's executed quite well. The camera system gets in the way, and I'll talk about that later, but it's good to see, and I like the way that it's been implemented. You also have certain vehicles that can do things with the terrain. So there's a certain vehicle that will lay roads for you, there's a certain vehicle that will flatten the terrain, there's one that will dig into the earth, things like that. I really like that. I think terrain deformations are really needed feature in games like this, and I think it's executed for the most part relatively well. The second aspect is block placement. And this is where I start to have issues. Now, it's not for reasons of not having enough blocks and things like that. Actually, the blocks in this are fantastic. There's a huge selection of block types in this, way more than you find in most other games, and I really like it. If you're the kind of person who just wants to go all out and build some really complicated structure, you have all the blocks required to be able to do something like that here, and it's good in that regard. I really like it. The textures are not great, though, honestly. That you have set paint colors, essentially, just flat colors, and then you have some transparent objects, which I guess you could use to mimic glass, but there really isn't enough there. And I know it's Lego, and Lego is like that in real life, but it would have been nice to see some textures, honestly, because people are going to want to make cool castles and flags and things like that, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to do the level of detail work that they can do in other games in this game, simply because it doesn't offer enough textures. But the real problem here is the control system. So it's difficult to explain how this works, and if you played it you would immediately understand, but the camera just does not want to behave in this game. It will constantly get stuck in trees, get stuck under the earth, in a cliff. You can never find the right place for the camera in this. And when you're constructing, essentially how it works is your character will sort of float into the air, okay? And you can sort of get a semi-top-down view of the world. And you start placing blocks. Now, the blocks can be quite small as well, so you do have to place a lot more than you would in other games, and that's good because it allows you to have more detail, but it also takes more time. And a lot of the time, because of the camera, you'll place the blocks incorrectly. Now, if you've got the camera at some kind of obtuse angle, and you try and put a block down, it will just get placed in the wrong place, or it'll intersect with another block, or it just won't look right. And so you'll have to delete it and start the process over again. And that can take some time. And because of the camera system, the way that it works is you have to have the camera in the right place, otherwise the block won't get placed down correctly, right? And so you have to constantly move the camera. And the reason for this is because the center of rotation isn't based on the last block you placed, which you'd think that it would be, because that would make sense. What it does instead is it bases it on the character. But the problem is that every time you move the camera, you're also moving the character. And so you're constantly having to readjust the camera all the time. And then it gets stuck in the tree, as I've said, or stuck under the earth. And it just becomes incredibly frustrating to get anything actually done in this game. In games like Terraria and Minecraft, they're a lot more simple, sure, and they offer less variety in terms of block choices. But the ease of which you can just get things built is so much better than in this game. The camera system and control system absolutely ruins for me what could be one of the best aspects of this game, and it's a real shame in my opinion. Now, one other problem here is not so much what the game has available, but what it's missing, right? So when you compare it to games like Minecraft and Terraria, and it's obviously, I'm referring to those games for a reason, this game is heavily inspired by those games. This game just lacks in a number of areas. It doesn't have any kind of crafting system. It doesn't have any kind of harvesting system. There's no real combat system to speak of, and there's no penalty for death. There's no survival mechanics. Like, in this game, you can hit someone and they'll hit you back, and if you let them kill you, they will kill you. But you'll just instantly respawn, and you'll have dropped some coins on the floor and just pick them up. It's not a big deal. There's no combat system. There's no monsters out there in the way of you exploring and discovering things that you have to fight. There's no RPG mechanics. There's no stats. There's nothing here. It's just a really, really rudimentary exploration game with some cool building tools that are unfortunately poorly executed because of the bad controls and camera system. It really doesn't have any of the gameplay that you expect in a game like this. It's a really cool creative tool. I mean, if they fix the camera problems, it would be at least. But in terms of a game, it's just really barren, and there's not much to offer, honestly, at this point. The user interface in this game is basic at best. It's difficult to navigate, and it clearly wasn't designed very well for a keyboard and mouse, which is strange when you consider that this is a PC-only title right now. Also, the visual options are not amazing. I mean, it's an early access game, so I can forgive it to some degree, but there's not a lot here in terms of graphics options, and one area that really bugs me is the full-screen anti-aliasing choice that they've made. Now, I understand that it's not very expensive when you use full-screen anti-aliasing, so they've probably just put it in temporarily, but I do hope they add some additional options here, because right now, when you take full-screen anti-aliasing and combine it with the depth of field effect, the game looks like a blurry mess, honestly, and I just ended up turning both of them off just so I could have some more fidelity in what I was looking at. It makes the game look really, really blurry, and it's just not very nice, so I hope they fix this and address this in future. In terms of key bindings, there isn't any, so if you're using keyboard and mouse, don't expect to be able to change the controls, and there are a lot of controls in this game, so it's kind of annoying, honestly. There's a lot of fiddly stuff, and I would have liked to be able to rebind it to things that made more sense to me. It's not very intuitive right now. So my conclusion for this game is pretty simple. Right now, I do not feel that the game is in a state worthy of purchase. It's got the potential to be a very cool creative tool, but right now it doesn't have the potential to be a good game. The control system isn't good, it performs poorly, I'm getting 15 to 20 FPS on a regular basis, and the camera system is awful and gets in the way of any potential enjoyment I might have had playing this game. Now, if you're the kind of person who loves LEGO and just wants a tool to be able to make LEGO things, even then, I would say hold off until they fix the controls on this game. But for everyone else, I'd give this game a miss and just play Terraria and Minecraft. That was my review of LEGO Worlds for PC. If you found it helpful and useful in some way, let me know in the comments. If you hate me because I don't like a #1 selling game on Steam, feel free to let me know also. Otherwise, like, favorite, share, and subscribe. And as always, guys, I really do appreciate you watching my videos. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.